This video will address the educational exception, what it is, what uses are allowed, and what conditions must be met for use to qualify under this exception. The information in this video is intended for the St. FX community as a professional guide. It is not intended to be legal advice. The educational exception is a provision in the Copyright Act that aims to provide a balance between the rights of the copyright owner and the rights of users. This exception allows certain copyright-protected works to be used without permission or payment under certain conditions. To qualify under the educational exception, the use must be by an educational institution or a person acting under its authority. It must be for the purpose of education or training. It must happen on the premises of the educational institution. It must be not-for-profit, and when applicable, the audience must be made up of primarily students and educators of the institution. These conditions apply to all uses under the educational exception. The Copyright Act specifically names the uses that are allowed under the educational exception. Each use may have further limits or conditions in addition to the ones already mentioned. Uses include classroom display, reproduction for exams, different types of performances, copying broadcast programs, telecommunication of a lesson, and the use of publicly available material on the Internet. Let's look at each of these in more detail. The first allowable use is reproduction for instruction, which includes reproducing a work to display in the classroom, such as in a PowerPoint presentation, as well as reproducing, translating, performing, or telecommunicating a work as required for a test or an exam. This use has the added condition that the work must not be commercially available in an appropriate medium for the use. The second allowable use includes a number of different types of performances. An educational institution for the purpose of education or training, on its premises, not for profit, and before an audience made up of primarily students and educators of that institution, may perform the following: a live performance of a copyright-protected work, provided the performers are primarily students of the institution; a sound recording, provided the recording used is not an infringing copy; a work, such as a television or radio show, at the time of its telecommunication to the public, provided the signal used is not an infringing one; and a cinematographic work or a film, provided the physical or electronic version used is not an infringing copy. For more details on allowable performances, please view the copyright video on performances. The third educational exception use addresses the reproduction or copying of broadcast programs to be shown in class at a later date. With the usual educational exception conditions, we are allowed to copy a news program or a news commentary program at the time of its telecommunication to the public, provided only a single copy is made and the broadcast signal used is not an infringing one. Please note that a news program does not include a documentary program. A documentary program would fall under the second type of allowable broadcast reproduction, which refers to any work and has additional conditions and limits attached. Again, only a single copy can be made, and the broadcast signal used must not be an infringing one. The copy can be kept for 30 days while we decide whether to show it. After 30 days, if we have not shown the copy, it must be destroyed. If we decide to show it, permission must be obtained and royalties paid, and a record must be kept of all the details of the process. The educational exception also allows for the provision of lessons by telecommunication. This refers to distance learning and the use of real-time instruction platforms such as Collaborate. We are basically allowed to conduct lessons as we would in a classroom setting by telecommunication, provided they are communicated only to students enrolled in the course. Additionally, this provision allows for a copy of a lesson to be made by either the instructor or the student in order for the lesson to be viewed at a later date. Any copies must be destroyed within 30 days after the students enrolled in the course have received their final grades. And finally, the educational exception addresses the use of work that is available through the Internet. In addition to the usual educational exception conditions, there are a number of further limits attached to the use of material found on the Internet. The source and author of the work must be attributed. The work must not be protected by a digital lock. There must be no clearly visible notice prohibiting our use. and we must not know or should have known that the work is on the Internet in violation of the copyright owner's rights. The wording "should have known" is written in the Copyright Act and assumes a level of competence in selecting credible websites and in assessing whether material has been posted legally. For further details, please view our copyright video on works available through the Internet. If you have any questions about the content of this video or about any copyright issues, please email us at copyright@stfx.ca or visit the Campus Copyright Guide at the URL displayed on the screen for more information.